Welcome to From Our Generation, where we uncover the ideas and events that shape the world we live in today. I'm Crom Carmichael.
And I'm Mike Hassel.
Together we'll explore the past to better understand the present, because history isn't just about what happened, it's about how you think about it. Well, Michael, it is October 3rd, 2025, and this is From Our Generation to Yours. And we want to always mention that if you're interested in the ideas that have changed the course of history, please go to giantsofpoliticalthought.com, giantsofpoliticalthought.com, and where you and I, for mostly you, back in the 80s and 90s, we took 16 of history's most influential thinkers. We took their works and we put them on audio presentations that not only provide the context to help people understand the times in which these thinkers lived and the circumstances that caused them to write what they wrote, but also the importance of what they wrote over time.
So, you and I are businessmen. We're not philosophers. We're not historians. We're not academics at all. But the experience of doing that project, I think, gives us the background that's behind a lot of the things we say on this podcast.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. And so today what I want to do is I want to talk about a number of things that are going on right now. I mean, different stories are not, they're not all related they're unrelated, but they're all timely, and they all relate to a fundamental question that I have, and that is the foundation of our country. And I came across a very interesting, in fact, Glenn Beck, on one of his programs, he talked about the seven deadly sins, and the seven deadly sins are not in the Bible per se as listed as the seven deadly sins, as the Ten Commandments are listed.
Yeah, this is Catholic doctrine. It's not the founders of the country. They weren't trying to enshrine virtues, but it was part of the Western heritage that they were operating in.
Yes, but all of the seven deadly sins are found in the Bible in one area or another, and some of them are found in the Ten Commandments, but they're in other verses in the Bible. And so I want to just discuss those, and then there's also then we're going to add on to that the seven heavenly virtues. And so the question is, as our listeners are listening to these things, are these characteristics, the seven deadly sins, are these characteristics that they think human beings should have or not have? And then the same question on the virtues.
And how are they exhibiting themselves in our culture today?
Yes, how are they exhibiting, and what might be the cause of those? Because as Glenn Beck said, our society is getting coarser and it's getting worse. And the seven deadly sins are all more evident. These characteristics are more evident today than they were in the past. That's a statement that Glenn Beck made. And so part of it is, do we agree with that? And if so, what is why have the seven deadly sins become more prominent in the way we think of things? And so here are the seven deadly sins: pride, greed, wrath, lust, envy, gluttony, and sloth.
Laziness would be the modern word for it.
Laziness, in other words. Yeah. And so those would be, and so I think very few people would defend any of those characteristics as good. Pride, greed, wrath, that means getting angry.
Sure.
Lust, envy, gluttony, and sloth, i.e. laziness.
And they're all part of human nature. We all exhibit those things, even the best of us. At some point, exhibit those things more or less. So let's not pretend that we're dividing people among the virtuous and the vile.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What Glenn Beck is saying, as a society, is we're moving in the wrong direction as a society. So you and he would agree. On that, on what you just said. And so now, and then when we get into some of these stories of today, we'll ask whether or not these stories and whether or not the government and government policies and perhaps the media are contributing toward the slide toward these where we are acting in a more, I'm going to say, sinful way, because they're called the seven deadly sins. Yeah. And then on the other side of that is the seven heavenly virtues: prudence, justice, temperance, courage, faith, hope, charity. Those are all things that if you ask people, regardless of their political persuasion, if they would like to have those characteristics, virtually everybody would say yes. Now, then how those characteristics are manifested by your political opponent, somebody who disagrees with you, that's where you say, well, that's not a virtue, that's a vice.
So before we pitch in, let me make this observation.
Sure.
Susan and I are religiously active in the Presbyterian Church. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I go to church is that we get reminded of this week in and week out to examine which of those things are we not doing the best job with, which of those should we think about more and strive more to be better. Mm-hmm. They're fundamentally religious kind of concerns. These are listed from the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. What's interesting in our discussion is that we are now bleeding over into the political world. And part of what's going on in our culture is a lot of people look for their redemption in politics.
And they look for the solution.
That's what I mean. They look for the solution to problems. They look for redemption, which is to make themselves more whole, more purposeful, better people. And they see that in a political agenda rather than a religious one.
Yeah.
And the bigger the government is, the more that is encouraged.
Yes, and there's a significant segment of the population that sees bigger government as fundamentally good.
Yes, and that doesn't include you or me.
No, it does not. And in fact, you and I would believe that the larger government gets, the more pride, greed, envy, and I would even argue gluttony and sloth.
You left out lust.
I don't know that bigger government. I did leave that one out.
Well, there's plenty of sex scandals around.
Well, they're true. That's true. Maybe it's bigger government.
I'm just joking,
but what's interesting is that and this I'm kind of digressing just for here, but we're going to get into it in just a second. Our society's become more overweight. It's become more prone to diabetes. Our society, as government has provided more and more subsidies to health care, our society has gotten less healthy. The individual members of society have
I think we're not talking about today, but this is really the controversy about RFK, who's wanting to attack chronic disease and a lot of the processes that are making us generally fat.
Yes.
And so this week, Hexeth comes in and says even the top generals are now going to take PT and they're going to be fit.
Right.
Or we're going to fire you. Fat generals are walking around are not going to be tolerated
anymore.
Right. This has created controversy. But I remember when I was a kid, JFK, John Kennedy, started a whole thing about fitness.
Of course
in
he
the
did.
Culture.
And it was huge.
Yeah.
And very popular and very good. And so it is interesting
that
his
as good and promoted as good for the country.
Yeah.
To have these standards.
Yeah. So his nephew is now promoting the same thing and getting pushback from JFK's party.
One other thing I wanted to say, I wanted to connect before we get away to this point about the founding. The country was founded with an ideal of limited government. The Constitution outlined limited government. And there were comments at the time from people that this is made for a religious people.
Yes.
And what they meant was not that you inculcate religious ideals into the government, but that religion urges people to control themselves.
Yes.
And the government is not looked to do a lot of things in moral formation, and that you don't need a big government when people have some kind of moral discipline from somewhere else.
Well, and from somewhere else is a key phrase there.
Yes.
And believe that personal responsibility is a virtue.
Yeah, and somebody that's completely not religious may be one of those people. I want to make that clear.
Right.
But religion does a lot to encourage that, to continually remind it, and to institutionally get some way of being constantly encouraged to improve.
Well, and in your book that you wrote, you bring a lot of these types of themes into your books on these trade-offs.
Yes.
Yeah, and so you've thought deeply about these particular subjects. And so what I want to do is and we'll come back to these by name, but for example, my question is, if you provide health care free of charge, does that encourage people to be less healthy? Because there's nothing that they have to pay for being less healthy.
We'll encourage people to be irresponsible.
Okay.
That's up to somebody else to pay the bill, to fix me. I have a right to have health care, and I'll go.
And therefore, I have a right to be healthy, even if I overeat, and become way overweight.
Yes.
And so what I'm saying, I'm about 30 pounds over where I should be.
Yeah.
So when people are saying, well, you're not a great example, I'll be the first to admit I'm not a great example.
Yeah.
So having said that, the question is, is part of my reason for not paying as much attention to my weight is because I'm on Medicare? I don't know the answer to that, but somebody else is paying my bill because I paid into Medicare for all of my working life.
A friend of mine came to me one time and said, I've just seen the biggest example of why we shouldn't have universal health care that I've ever seen. He had been to a breakfast buffet at a local restaurant and saw a guy with a plate, biscuits smothered with gravy, bunch of bacon and sausage.
That wasn't me, was it?
Heart attack on a plate. I don't think it was you. He didn't say who it was, but he made the very effective point. Well, there's a. I've already said it. I'll give you another example. My wife used to work with a Vanderbilt professor who would give lectures at her company events. She was in the hospital business.
Yeah.
And he would talk about he liked to get mayonnaise on his cheese fries.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Which was a lie, but his point was there's no consequence. If I eat mayonnaise on my cheese fries, Atticus over here is going to pay for it in his taxes.
Yeah, and this, by the way, and I want to always during this period in here, I want to always kind of bring up what I think is going on in Turning Point and Charlie Kirk, because that's exactly the type of thing that Charlie Kirk would talk about on college campuses. And he would also talk about the importance of religion more and more as he got older. And in the last 2 or 3 years of his life as he would go around, he would talk more about that than he would about economics. Now, if somebody asked him a question about economics, he would answer the question. But he tried to answer it in terms of a religious or moral put a construct on it and that was what made him what I think caused the crowds to become much larger, and what I believe is what's making Turning Point much bigger and stronger. By the way, we'll get into this in a little bit, but Turning Point opened a number of chapters in South Korea, which was a mystery to me when I read about that. But when we get a little bit later in here, we'll talk about what's going on in South Korea. And why it's important to us. Okay. So at any rate, I want to get into now a few of the issues of the day, and remembering these vices and virtues.
Okay.
This is an article from the Wall Street Journal. Let the Obamacare enhanced premium subsidies expire. And one thing that I note when you hear media people talk about stuff, they don't give you detailed facts. They will make claims like there are 50 million people who will be affected. But they don't tell you how. They don't tell you anything other than that. You go, ooh, 50 million people is a lot. That's terrible.
Presumably, they're all going to lose their insurance and be bereft.
Right. That's kind of
that's the implication.
It's the implication, and then even the people arguing against it don't have the facts to say, well, that's not true. That is an untrue statement. And in fact, if you know that you're deceiving somebody by saying that, if your intent is to deceive people into supporting your side, then you're actually telling a lie. But so here's the actual, this is from the article here that's quite interesting. The Affordable Care Act premium subsidies were originally available only to people with incomes up to 400% of the federal poverty level. In 2025, that's approximately $62,000 for a single person and $128,000 for a family of four. It says, letting the subsidies go away merely restores the original Obamacare premium support structure, because what happened during COVID was under, quote, these emergencies and crises, they changed the program to provide greater subsidies.
A temporary supplement.
Supposedly temporary.
Emergency conditions.
Supposedly temporary because of COVID.
Yes.
Well, COVID's gone now.
Yes.
But Democrats now want to say, okay, well, it was temporary. Now we want to make it permanent. Okay, but here's what that means. Letting the subsidies go away merely restores the original Obamacare premium support structure. That preserves access to subsidies for the lower income population, which already comprises 93% of the 24 million people who get health insurance under the Obamacare exchanges. So let's be clear here. the lower income people are not affected at all. But the upper income people who were getting subsidies that younger people had to pay for, because somebody has to pay for the government subsidy. Now, wealthier people were getting Obamacare. And so here's what it says is the expiration will affect roughly 1.6 million current enrollees. These are people that are over 400% of the poverty level. A family of four in Arizona making $600,000. A married couple in West Virginia making $580,000. A single individual in Vermont making $180,000. A single person. They all qualify for subsidies that other people have to pay for. And Republicans are saying, no, wealthy people ought to pay for their own insurance, and they shouldn't get it subsidized by lower income, healthy young people. And the Democrats are determined to try to get wealthy people on their goals. So I want to go back to the 7 deadly sins and ask, is trying to get as many wealthy people as possible have their health insurance paid for by the government. Does any of that apply to pride, greed, wrath? Maybe not. Lust? Not necessarily. Envy? Absolutely. Gluttony? Yes. Slothfulness? Yes. So 4 out of 7 of the things that we think are bad, the Democrats want to support through legislation, and so simply put, since 2021, Congress has been bribing higher income Americans to purchase expensive Obamacare plans by hiding the plan's true price tags using taxpayer dollars. And so the upper income people are buying these expensive policies, but they're being subsidized. And so
just a note on expensive policies. In our prior podcast, we've basically developed the equation that prosperity equals low cost.
Yes.
You get to prosperity by lower cost. Healthcare costs have not been going down since the inception of Obamacare.
They've been going up, skyrocketing.
Yes.
And so the answer is
they require you to buy things you probably wouldn't buy if you weren't forced to.
Well, and then then the Democrat solution to that is to subsidize it so that it masks the higher cost. So I want to take in this conversation we're having, because right now we're really talking about the shutdown, and Newt Gingrich was on with Larry Kudlow, and
so the shutdown is the federal government shutdown that started 2 days ago.
Yeah, and
it's Friday here, and that happened on Wednesday night, I think.
Yeah. Well, you and I have fun with this type of thing.
Yes.
Since it happened at 12:01 Wednesday morning.
Okay.
The question is, was it Tuesday at midnight or was it Wednesday at midnight?
Oh, that's a philosophical question.
But isn't it interesting that you could say, two people could say exactly what I just said? Oh, the government shut down Tuesday at midnight.
Yeah.
And somebody else could say, no, it shut down Wednesday at midnight. And
yeah, it's semantics, isn't it?
Yeah, semantics. But at any rate, it was 12:01 Wednesday morning.
So we're in the third day of the shutdown.
We're in the third day of the shutdown. And Trump said a few days before the shutdown started, and let's be clear on why we have a shutdown. The House passed a completely clean, and when I say completely clean continuing resolution, they added no additional legislation other than to say we will continue to spend what we were spending per last year's budget until November 21st.
So they weren't trying to change any policy and put any partisan stuff there, with one exception. They were wanting to add security costs for the legislature and I think mostly, maybe judges, but it's mostly the legislature.
Okay.
So that was all. That was nonpartisan. Everybody agrees that since Charlie Kirk, there's a heightened level of threat to public people.
Okay.
And so they were going to add that.
Okay.
That's the only exception.
Okay. And so at any rate, that passed the House, and then it went to the Senate.
On a party line vote, by the way. I think Republicans voted all for it. All Democrats voted against it.
One Democrat voted with the Republicans in the House. He's from Maine.
Okay.
And so he
So it passed by 3 votes or something?
It passed by 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now it goes to the Senate, where the Senate voted 53-47. No, excuse me. Was it 53-47?
I don't know.
3 Democrats voted with the, so 55-45. 55 voted for it, 45 voted against it, but it requires 60 for it to pass. And so it didn't pass because it didn't meet the 60-vote threshold. But there were 55 senators who voted for it. 3 of those were Democrats. Every Republican except Ron Paul voted for the CR, continuing resolution. Rand Paul voted against it. And so it did pass, but didn't pass by a large enough amount. And so Democrats are the ones who are
they got a majority of votes, but not the required 60 votes, so it did not pass.
Correct.
Yes.
It did not pass. Thank you. And so Democrats say they all but 3 voted to shut down the government. And so the government is shut down because Democrats refused to give enough votes to go along with virtually all the Republicans to reach 60. Now, Gingrich, and there's a lots of political talk about this, and Trump is making fun of Schumer and making fun of Hakeem Jeffries, neither of whom can take a joke. They can dish it out, but they can't take it. And they don't mind calling Republicans all kinds of vile things like Nazi and jackbooted thugs and fascists and all these different things that are truly terrible words, terrible things to call your political opponent. But then when Trump uses AI to put words in Schumer's mouth, it's obvious that it's a satire, and then has Hakeem Jeffries standing next to him and uses AI to put a sombrero on Hakeem Jeffries' head and a little mustache, and Hakeem Jeffries goes absolutely berserk over this. It just shows that they have no joy, no sense of humor, and they can dish it out, but they can't take it. And the public sees this and recognizes that.
Let me defend this a little bit, because this is not funny. You know, what's going on is high stakes, and I can see why they would be humorless and not really. It's a perfect opportunity for Trump to troll them, as unappealing as that might be to some people and unpresidential and all of that kind of stuff. But he's ridiculing them effectively in the way he does that. I think it's worth noting that this has happened like 13 times, where they would kick the can down the road enough to have the time to get to an actual budget or an actual authorization, as opposed to a continuing resolution. This time, the last time Schumer did that, about 2 months ago, I think.
No, March.
So about 6 months ago, 6 or 7 months ago, he did it because he didn't want to shut down the government. And now he got so much pushback from the progressives in his faction, in his party, that they are not going to tolerate this. And they basically he's looking after his own political welfare, because he's going to be primaried unless he fights. They want to fight.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and so Newt Gingrich. So there's 2 things I want to talk about here. Newt Gingrich,
the former Speaker of the House,
former
was
Speaker,
a Republican in the 90s, where we did have a balanced budget for a few years.
And there was the government shutdown. And the government shutdown happened because I don't remember whether it was the House passed something, or maybe the House wouldn't pass something unless President Clinton would agree to certain things, and so the government shut down. And because I think the House passed something that Clinton vetoed, and it passed the Senate, and Clinton vetoed it, saying I'm not going to agree to that, and so people say that the media people and a lot of leftist type historians will say that Clinton won that battle, over that, but Gingrich points out that shutdown fight, as far as Gingrich and the Republicans was concerned, was to get to a balanced budget. And they had 4 balanced budgets at that period of time. So as far as Gingrich says, I don't care what the historians say. The truth is that the people who wanted to balance the budget won that battle. And so that was an interesting thing. But what's great with Clinton, what Gingrich says is this, he's talking to Kudlow, he says, the country is against closing the government. The country is against raising spending. So the Democrats have adapted a 2-no strategy. A two-no strategy.
Yeah.
They want to close the government in order to get more spending. That's a double negative. Gingrich says, it's not easy to design a strategy where you are wrong on both sides. And that is where Schumer finds himself, is that the left is determined to have bigger government. Because, Michael, as I've said since we've been starting this podcast, the Democrat Party has changed from being a party that was practical 30 or 40 years ago to one that is now myopic in the sense that it will only support bigger government. That is all that it will support. It doesn't care about the debt. It doesn't care about deficit spending. It doesn't care about inflation. It only wants bigger government and more government power and more government employees because the Democrat Party is driven by the government employee unions. And so that's the Gingrich thing. So I want to bring in one other kind of interesting thing that's going on here, and that is I want to talk about John Fetterman. John Fetterman is the senator from Pennsylvania.
Democratic senator.
Democrat senator. He was elected about 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. He had just had a massive stroke, a very, very terrible stroke. And during the debate, he could hardly, in fact, he couldn't understand a question. So he had to be able to, somebody would ask a question and he could only read it. But he could read it, but he couldn't understand it if he was listening to it. Mm. And then when he would answer, it would be a truly garbled answer because he couldn't get his words in the correct order and things. And he won the election against Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, who's now in the now working with Kennedy in the area of health and human services. But anyway, Fetterman won that election, and Republicans did not like him at all. So, but here's the data, and Fetterman voted with the Republicans to keep the government open.
This past
time.
Okay.
And he has voted with Republicans on other things, but not all the things. He voted against the big, beautiful bill. He voted against a lot of big financial things last spring.
So the bigger picture here is he's not towing the line. He's not towing the party line.
Yes.
And he's swapping on various issues. We've talked about vote counts here where there were almost always party line votes.
Yes.
With the exception of Rand Paul in one case and 3 Democrat senators in another case. Mostly what we get these days is block voting with few mavericks, few renegades.
Right. But John Fetterman is saying that he thinks independently. But here's what that means from a polling standpoint of Pennsylvania voters, and I find this to be absolutely fascinating. Republicans today there's Republicans in Pennsylvania, approve of Fetterman today 62-21 compared to a negative 75-16 a year ago. I mean, that's
a pretty big shift.
That is an astounding shift. I would never have thought that to be even possible. On the Democrat side, his disapproval rating among Democrats now stands at 54-33. So 54% of Democrats in Pennsylvania oppose him, and 33% favor him. A year ago, he had 80% approval, 10% disapproval among Democrats. Independent voters haven't changed. It's now 43-43 compared to 42-43 a year ago. There's
a very simple explanation for this.
Please.
Is to say he's not a team player. So the Democrats hate him because he's not a team player. He's a Democrat, but he's not playing on our team. He's voting against us. Republicans love him. They used to dislike him 80-10. Now they like him a lot more because he's not towing the line on the Democrat. It just is about playing the team line.
Yes.
And a friend of mine said, politics is a team sport. You have to get a majority of votes. And so there is reason for this kind of conforming behavior, this herd-like mentality.
Yeah. So here's my question to you. John Fetterman clearly has upset the Democrats in Pennsylvania. He has clearly made the Republicans in Pennsylvania like him.
More than they did.
Yes.
Much
more. And
yeah.
I'm talking about both have been an enormous swing. Enormous.
Right.
So my question is he the shrewdest? Is he truly a stand-up guy, an independent thinker, or is he the shrewdest politician in my lifetime? Because here's the situation now. He's going to be up for re-election in 2028. He knows that's a presidential year, and when you run in a presidential year, many more voters from both parties turn out, and it's harder to win if the top of the ticket. If J.D. Vance is the top of the ticket in 28 and carries Pennsylvania, Fetterman's chances of carrying Pennsylvania drop considerably.
As a Democrat.
As a Democrat, if he is a Democrat who is seen as towing the line, towing the party line.
Right.
But now what Fetterman's done is he's made himself a very popular politician among Republicans. Democrats don't like him, but he can say to the Democrats, and the Democrats, the labor unions have come out publicly, government employee unions have come out publicly against Fetterman, and they're threatening to primary him. Now, if Fetterman, and this is what I think may be going on here, Fetterman will tell the Democrats, if you primary me, I'll switch parties.
So part of your question, is he virtuous? Is he, voting his conscience? Or is he shrewd in playing the politics of it so he optimizes his chances of getting reelected?
Yes. And I don't know the answer.
But I will say this, though. Whatever the answer is to that, I don't think he's the shrewdest politician of the century. I think Donald Trump is a better candidate for that.
Fair enough.
Because of the size of what he's accomplished.
Yes. I meant...
I know what
you're exactly right, and you are exactly right. Yeah. I just meant being clever in convincing. Trump has not convinced Democrats to vote for him, to support him.
Well, some of them are shifting over.
Well, fair point.
Yeah.
Fetterman has gotten a complete reversal, and I don't know if it's because he's truly genuine, or if he just is very clever. But you're right. Trump is the most consequential. He is the most consequential politician in my lifetime.
And part of that's because he's shrewd.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so at any rate, I wanted to get to a couple of other issues that are up. It's been in the news about this illegal immigrant who was selected by the school board in Des Moines, Iowa, to be the superintendent of schools in Des Moines, Iowa. They claim that they did not know he was an illegal immigrant at the time that they picked him, but that has since come out. But other things have come out also. He apparently registered to vote in Maryland.
And he's still registered to vote there, I think.
Yes, there's no record that he did vote, but he registered to vote. There's also now evidence, or not evidence, but there are lawsuits.
This is back when he lived in Maryland, by the way.
Yes.
Long ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the Maryland man, or Alberto Garcia, or whatever,
okay. Yeah.
And the Trende Aragua fellow.
Okay.
But this fellow that we're talking about now, he worked for a school system in Pennsylvania.
There are big liabilities that they had to pay off for things he had done, like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It was over $400,000 if you add the three judgments together. So you have that. He had a loaded gun in his car. When they arrested him, he didn't have a license to have a gun at all, and he had $3,000 cash. And he fled. He parked his car, ran into the woods, and tried to hide in the bush. Now, the part about this that is interesting, in addition to what we've been talking about, is that the head of the school board that picked him is now running for the U.S. Senate.
In Iowa.
And is a Democrat running for the U.S. Senate. Her initial response when ICE picked this person up, by the way, Biden had already issued in the spring of 2024, had issued a deportation notice. So he had already had his due process. And he was told he received a deportation notice, told to leave the country.
A year and a half ago,
which he ignored, obviously. Now this head of the school board is now claiming, the first thing she did was she rallied in favor of her selection. Knowing
he's a good guy, the kids love him, he's doing good things here.
Knowing that he was an illegal immigrant.
Yeah.
Okay. What she claims she didn't know is about the three lawsuits in Pennsylvania. She claims she didn't know that he was a registered voter in Maryland.
These are public records.
But she is claiming that they hired a search firm.
Yeah.
Search firm's name is unknown to me. It may have been out there somewhere. I've not seen it. But she is claiming the search firm did not provide them with this information. Now,
they were duped.
That's what she says. They were duped. And so it's not their fault. And so the feds are now investigating. And so we will find out how much the school board knew and how much it didn't know. But I think that's an interesting issue at the sign right now. This one's one, Michael, that we talked about. Tilly Norwood. Tilly Norwood is an AI created actress. She's very attractive. She's very smart. And what I was told in asking, I said, how does an AI actress get created? And what they said was they take the likeness of thousands of people and put them in a database, and then that database creates a look from thousands of people. And then they take thousands of voices and put them in a database and create a voice for this particular AI-generated character. And so this person, and when you look at the person, you think she's real.
Yes, it doesn't look like a cartoon or a drawing or anything. It looks like a photograph of a real person,
right?
Or video of a real
person,
right?
And so I want us to chat here just a little bit about. I have been told that students can have term papers written using AI.
Yes.
I've been told that even books can be written. Novels, especially,
yes,
can be written using AI.
Mm-hmm.
Movie scripts are going to be written using AI. Now it looks like actors and actresses for those films or TV productions might end up being AI generated.
Well, this was a topic in the last work action from SAG-AFTRA, I think is the name of their union, Screen Actors Guild and
Mm-hmm.
American something, of theater, arts, something like that. They were concerned about that then. They knew that this was coming. And so now we're seeing it. You have this AI actress out there, and so it's palpable to us. You can see how this could just replace the role of a person as an actress. Mm-hmm. And so they're, obviously up in arms. This is a real threat to live actors. I have friends that are live actors. I can understand what kind of, existential threat that would be to their livelihood.
Yeah.
To me, the question comes down to human connection. Can these things feel like a human connection? Can they convince you enough to be moved? Right.
And that's a fair question. And in film, as opposed to a Broadway play, it might be easier.
Yes.
To have an AI generated movie character.
Yeah.
But
there are holograms, by the way, for live performances. I've been to a church in Atlanta that has 5 campuses, and they have the pastor in one of them and a hologram of him in the other 4.
Wow.
And from far enough back, you really can't tell which one is which.
Okay.
And
yeah.
So it looks and behaves like a person, but it's an image of a person that's physically in another place.
So they could even have late night hosts on programs who are actually funny. They could have AI generate real humor.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, the question to me is how human-like can they be? This has been a question about robots for a long time. Can you fall in love with a robot? There are movies about that, right?
Yeah.
Is this realistic that you fall in love with a robot? There are crude forms of this. There are sex toys that, people imagine are real humans.
Yeah.
That seems quite inferior alternative to me. Although I don't have experience with it, I would say the same question is there. Is there a live connection?
But that is an AI or a robot in the same proximity as opposed to
one that's on a screen.
On the screen.
Yeah.
And so I would say that AI on the screen, this is an interesting thing. Some of these actors, I mean, The Rock is just huge, a big, he's a funny actor. He does a really good job with his roles.
Yeah.
I think he does a wonderful job, and I enjoy watching his movies. But you could create a bigger AI muscle guy.
A lot easier than what he's had to do to transform his body that way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible what his body looks like.
Yes, and so it's an interesting thing because actors, the stars, make immense amounts of money doing a film. They make anywhere from $15 to $30 million in doing a movie.
Well, it's because they attract audiences.
Sure.
Right.
So the question is, can an AI star attract an audience?
Yes.
And if they can, then the question is, does the Actors Guild have a right to stifle AI, or not even do they have a right to do it? Can they do it? Because the thing about AI is it can go any place in the world to be generated, to be done.
One of the possibilities is that these innovations just expand the universe for everybody, and there's more work, so you have a smaller market share, but you have more work than you did before. That's what happened when IBM entered the computer business. People were afraid it was going to take over. Little Apple, had their computers, and they got much smaller market share, but their revenues were like twice what they had been.
Right.
Because everything was growing so much. So that's one of the possibilities. But people see this as a direct conflict, a zero-sum kind of phenomenon where somebody's got to win in a degree that somebody else will lose.
Yeah. So anyway, that'll be an interesting thing to follow. It's not gonna. It's a story that is not going to go away. And we'll get and the effects of it will become clearer over time.
Sure.
There's a couple of things that really concern me going on college and university campuses. This is one where New York University, there's a writer who is actually coming from the Federalist Society, who is actually coming to talk about our form of government. I mean, it was really kind of a pretty boring kind of speech. But NYU said that they were canceling the event due to potential security concerns. Well, if a university decides that it can cancel conservative speakers over potential security concerns, then that means that they are now going to become the thought police, and they will control freedom of speech. And I say that because here's another story here. So University of New York is saying, we don't want that conservative talking about government on our campus. And the excuse that we're giving is a security concern. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you everybody wants to be safe.
It's an easy veto to anybody that just needs to threaten violence.
Exactly. That's right. University of Penn provost resigns after boasting social media posts likening Charlie Kirk to a Hitler Youth. And so he resigned over that. And this is a fellow named Michael Mann, resigned from his post, as I'm reading from Free Beacon, as the vice provost at the University of Pennsylvania. And says Mann stirred up the controversy repeatedly over the past several months, most recently when he shared a social media post that compared Kirk. He will remain, but here's the key thing. Mann will remain at the university as a professor and the director of its Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media. And so he is resigned as provost, but the university is still maintaining a person who doesn't deny that he compared Charlie Kirk to a Hitler Youth. And so the University of Pennsylvania thinks this is okay. The University of New York thinks that a person who wants to talk about the foundation of our country is
not okay.
Is not okay. And this, by the way, even though Trump is in office, all that's happened is that these instances have become more public. Because when Biden was in office, universities felt free to cancel conservative speakers and did regularly.
So there's a lot of complication here about whether someone resigns or is forced out matters in terms of what the law says. You can say what you want, but your employer does not have to tolerate it if they don't want to be associated with it. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things we could go in there about the nuances and semantics of how this works. What we're trying to point out is these glaring double standards.
Yes.
And what we're seeing in the last few weeks is people saying, this kicking Charlie Kirk off the air because the FCC commissioner
Kimmel.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Charlie Kirk. Yeah, Jimmy Kimmel, because of what he said about Charlie Kirk. I think Jake Tapper said that's the worst example of government coercion he had seen. It's been going on for decades to the right.
Yes.
Where you and I know, even under Obama, they were exiling, prohibiting.
Well, and Obama's the greatest abuse of his administration was when he used the IRS to deny over 300 organizations their tax-exempt EIN number. Now, what that did was these were 300 organizations that needed to have an EIN so that they could open a bank account so that they could participate in our political process.
Yeah.
The left had hundreds of those organizations, which is legal under the law. You just need to have a charter, and you need to have an EIN number. If you don't have an EIN number,
employee identification number,
then thank you. Mm-hmm. Then you cannot open a bank account, and therefore you cannot take in money. Therefore, you cannot do anything.
Can't function.
You cannot function. And Obama used the IRS to deny over 300 organizations the ability to participate in our political process.
And there was very little said about it in the media.
Media thought it was grand.
And there are other examples, I think, of Biden targeting red states.
Well, he targeted red states. He targeted parents who spoke up at PTA meetings. He went after Catholic churches that were quote conservative in how their priests taught. I guess did their sermons. Didn't
they try to characterize those parents as terrorists?
Yes, yeah. In fact, that's what Merrick Garland and James and the head of the
General under Biden,
the Attorney General and the head of the FBI, both said that the greatest threat to our country were white supremacists, and they included in the category of white supremacists parents who would show up at PTA meetings
and object to DEI
and object to all this trans stuff being forced on their children.
Well, which amounted to their children being accommodated for trans procedures or operations without the parents' participation.
Well, that was part of it, but the other one was indoctrination by teachers of the trans political world, and that you must agree with this doctrine. But then here's another example here. This is a professor who was fired for calling Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk quote Nazi, and said he was fired. Clinton appointed judge Karen, can't pronounce her last name, Schreie.
Oh.
I'll let you try to. You can give it a shot.
I'll try. And Schrei is what I would say.
Okay.
Sounds
right.
German.
Okay, that's
R-E-I-E.
That's close enough.
Yeah.
She's reinstated the professor, forced the university to take the professor back. And so it's just a fascinating thing that we have these cross currents where if you speak out and say something that the left doesn't like, you should be punished. And if you say something calling somebody a Nazi, which until not long ago everybody agreed that was bad, but since in the era of Trump,
but should it be prohibited? Even if it's bad, should it be prohibited? Can you say that about somebody?
Well,
in England, you absolutely can't.
Well, but in the U.S., your employer has a right to decide whether or not you should be employed.
Yeah, you can say it, but they can fire you for saying it because they
Correct.
don't want to be associated with it.
You can't be arrested for it.
Yeah.
But now what you have is you have a court. You have the government saying to a college, you don't have the right to fire a professor who calls somebody a Nazi. You don't have the right to do that.
Yeah.
Court said you have to put that person back in their job. That's.
Do you know what the rationale is for that?
I don't know. Let me give you the article, and you can kind of, if you want to do a bit of research, I'd love to get your perspective on what that court ruling was. If it gets appealed, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. If the university or college doesn't appeal it, then the ruling stands.
Well, this article said its statement constituted protected free speech, and you can't fire somebody for saying whatever they want to say.
And that just, to me, the employer has a right to determine what their employees say, especially if it's vile and terrible.
Right.
So anyway, then this was kind of an interesting article. Mamdani has now come out. This is in the last day or two.
This is the candidate for mayor of New York,
and it looks like he's going to win.
Yeah.
He is now claiming that he is going to increase spending by the city of New York to defend illegal immigrants. $100 million. Now, here's what's interesting. In the years 2023 and 2024, New York spent approximately $18 million of its money defending illegal immigrants. For 2026, it's already budgeted for next year. They've already passed next year's budget. For next year's budget, they've already budgeted to spend $54 million. Mamdani is now saying, in addition to the $54 million, I'm going to add another $100 million of New York. So the New York City taxpayers are going to be spending $150 million defending illegal immigrants from being deported. And so New York is, if they pick Mamdani and he does all the things or even half the things he promises that he'll do, the amount of disruption, just sheer disruption, that it will cause in New York will be something to watch. I'm reminded of the spoof movie, Escape from New York, where the President of the United States was flying over New York and something happened to his plane and a pod carrying the President landed in New York. And at that time, New York, the island of Manhattan had been turned into a prison. And it was a spoof movie. Russell, what's his name? Goldie Hawn's.
Oh, yeah, the actor.
Yeah. Kurt Russell? Kurt Russell. I like Kurt Russell. Yeah. He played this guy who had a patch on his eye. His name was Pritchkin. And he was a criminal. Yeah. But he was a rough guy. And so the feds went to him and said, if you go into New York and save the president, we'll pardon you. And you can be a free man. So Pritchkin was sent into New York to save the president, and it was kind of a spoof movie. Well, maybe it'll be more
spoof-like, is it in current circumstances? Well, we're having some fun with this. You may recall not long ago we talked about gerrymandering, and I said that data as of 2024 shows New York losing 3 or 4 House seats.
Yeah.
In the apportionment, the number of seats that go to the state of New York will be reduced by 3 or 4. I think it's 3. This will accelerate that.
Yeah, I'll bet you, Michael, that there is data. I'll bet you somebody has done a poll. Of course, polls of this type may be exaggerated. In fact, they probably are. But the poll is if Mamdani is elected, will you leave New York? And it'll be, and I think the percentage of people who will leave New York with Mamdani elected is a significantly larger yes than previously, either under de Blasio, who I thought was a lousy mayor. I think the city still functioned. The last thing I want to talk about today is Pope Leo. This gets back to he is head of the Catholic Church. He's the Pope, and he's an American.
Elected within the last year.
Yeah. Elected by the College of Cardinals.
Right.
And he, Pope Leo the 14th, wanted to give Senator Dick Durbin, a Lifetime Achievement Award for his support of immigrants. And this was actually by the Archdiocese of Chicago, it was the Archdiocese of Chicago, despite Durbin's long history of being pro-abortion up to the moment of birth.
Which contradicts the Catholic doctrine.
It is probably the single most important doctrine politically that they have.
I think
at least it used to be.
I think what we maybe didn't say is that Pope Leo is from Chicago.
Yes.
He was grew up there.
Yes.
And then was a priest there.
Yes.
And then Durbin is a
senator.
Illinois senator, and this involves then the Diocese of Chicago.
Yes. Yeah, but a number of other priests were outraged by the idea of giving Dick Durbin a Lifetime Achievement Award. And to his credit, Dick Durbin said, "I'm not going to create this controversy. I don't want to accept the award." So that part of it died away. But Pope Leo, he was, when asked, I'm going to quote from this article, when asked about the controversy on Tuesday, Pope Leo could have been singing I'm saying, here's what he said. Here's a quote: "Someone who says I am against abortion, but I'm in favor of the death penalty, is not really pro-life. Someone who says I'm against abortion, but I'm in agreement with the inhumane treatment of immigrants in the United States, I don't know if that's pro-life." So this is Pope Leo making a statement. First of all, he assumes that all treatment, any treatment of an illegal immigrant, is by definition apparently inhuman. So Pope Leo does not think that people who cross our border illegally should be deported. He just doesn't think. He thinks if you do that, by definition, that's inhumane. So Pope Leo doesn't think that the laws of America that are passed and on the books matter if they're inconvenient to his personal ideas.
So, it's probably church doctrine that you take in the stranger, that you're hospitable, and it maybe should be up to them if they want to do that. But they have to operate by the law.
Yeah, but if that were true, why does the Vatican have the most extreme immigration policies of any sovereign entity on the planet? It is the most extreme.
So the Vatican is a city-state within Italy.
Yes.
So it's a little bitty piece of land.
But it's still, it could take in immigrants.
And it
does not.
Yeah.
It is clear as a bell who can live in the Vatican and who can't. And if you're not allowed to live there, you are automatically not allowed to. If you sneak in, they will tell you, get out. But the first one really is quite something. Someone who says I'm against abortion, but says I'm in favor of the death penalty, is not really pro-life. So Pope Leo cannot distinguish or doesn't distinguish between innocent life and a person who has committed terrible acts. He thinks they're equal. Now, and he said they should be equally under the law. So that would also mean that in a state where you cannot have a death penalty, then according to Leo, you cannot have an abortion. Would that follow? If a state, for him, this is for Pope Leo, if a state says there will be no death penalty, should Pope Leo said, well, if there's no death penalty, then there is no death penalty, even for the innocent.
Well, an abortion is a kind of a death penalty if you accept that
there can be. So I'm saying, so Pope Leo would have to come out and say that he is against abortion by law in any state that doesn't have a death penalty, and then call into question the moral character of the politicians in those states if they don't agree with it.
I think the Catholic Church is pretty consistently against abortion.
Well,
but some of them don't. Some of the politicians.
Why would they give a lifetime award?
Yeah.
Why would they give a lifetime award to a politician who has consistently supported abortion? So what I'm saying is that this is this gets back to kind of the beginning.
There's one rule for me and another rule for thee.
Yeah. And so it's just interesting. And then the other thing that Pope Leo did that kind of just weird, I just falls under that category, is he blessed a piece of ice. And I suppose he did that in the name of global warming. And I just, I'm not Catholic. And by the way, if you say, when you talk to a Catholic, they say such and such, Catholics have a very, very wide, their political spectrum is very wide.
Yes.
And so you can ask one Catholic what they think, and they'll think this and nothing. And that's true. You and I are both Presbyterians. Presbyterians are similar. So I'm not trying to. And I'm not trying to attack Catholics as a group here, but I am saying that the leader of the Catholic Church has a very is having, and this goes back to the Pope John Paul. I don't remember what the numbers were, numeration during Reagan. He was, to me, the last pope who walked the walk and talked the talk, and was a very incredible anti-communist. He and Thatcher and Reagan, I think, helped bring down communism as we understood it in the Soviet Union.
Yes.
But the popes since then they've been trying to walk a fine line between being popular and being quote dogmatic in a Catholic tradition, and part of the problem the Catholic Church has is financially it's in a really tough spot, and the commentary when Leo was when the Pope from Chicago was picked and became Pope Leo. Mm-hmm. Part of it was they thought that the selection was because he would be able to help raise money, because most of the money that goes to the Catholic Church comes from contributors from the U.S. And I just wonder whether or not taking these positions will help that cause or not. But certainly it would create a good bit of confusion.
Well, I mean, one of the iron rules of politics is that, the bigger the tent, the more variety within. And if you want to be pure, you're going to end up with very small factions.
Well,
and even a faction of one may have two opinions about things.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, Michael, we've covered a lot of topics today, and I want to go back to what at the beginning of this, we really were trying to talk about the characteristics or the values that underpin a society that is prosperous, civil, and well governed. And the 7 sins, deadly sins, are pride, greed, wrath, lust, envy, gluttony, and sloth. And I think most people agree that these are things you don't want to be.
I think a lot of people these days are searching for an answer to this question about what is it that binds us together. Mm-hmm. There's a Constitution, there are some legal things, but culturally, morally, what is it that makes us a coherent whole? And
in addition to that, I think there's a lot, especially among younger college-age students, a sense of being, a sense of purpose.
Well, and this is what the Charlie Kirk phenomenon is addressing square on.
Yeah.
They're very much about this, and they're changing minds, and we don't know the consequences of that.
No, we don't.
We only be incredible.
You and I are just two observers of the times and chatting about it,
like so many other people are. But there's something happening there.
Yeah, and we will be able to, and the something that's happening will manifest itself in different ways, and we're going to get to
see it.
Assuming we live long enough, we'll get to see it.
Yeah. All right.
Enjoy it. Thanks, Mike.